Good evening and welcome to After Hours. I'm your host, Alex Salvi. You're all so lucky. I'm biased, but we have a great show ahead. Tonight, mixed messaging from the Biden administration on the issue of immigration, with leaked documents telling a different story. Plus, the Biden team taking a renewed focus on the Middle East, with the airstrikes on Syria. We begin tonight on the Republican side of the aisle. President Trump is again taking aim at President Biden, issuing a statement criticizing the administration's approach to key issues, most notably immigration. The former president saying, quote, "Our border is now totally out of control thanks to the disastrous leadership of Joe Biden." He goes on to say, "Our great border patrol and ICE agents have been disrespected, demeaned, and mocked by the Biden administration. A mass incursion into the country by people who should not be here is happening on an hourly basis, getting worse by the minute." So we're going to break down the Biden administration's approach to the border in the next segment. But there's another issue that we need to address first. We're hearing these criticisms through press releases and not through President Trump's social media accounts because he remains banned on multiple platforms. But that may not be the case for long, at least when it comes to YouTube. CEO Susan Wojcicki says the platform will at some point lift the ban and allow President Trump's account to once again be restored when the risk of him inciting violence decreases. That's what they're saying. So you may remember the account was first suspended following the January 6th riot, with a number of social media platforms simultaneously acting to remove him from their platforms. But YouTube says their ban is by no means permanent.
The channel remains suspended due to the risk of incitement to violence. And given just the warnings by the Capitol Police yesterday about a potential attack today, I think it's pretty clear that that elevated violence risk still remains. However, I do want to confirm that we will lift the suspension of the channel. We will lift the suspension of the Donald Trump channel when we determine that the risk of violence has decreased.
No, of course, there was no violence this week, despite many in the media telling us that there were serious threats of another attack in Washington, D.C. Didn't see it. Plus, when it comes to YouTube's actions, many of the president's supporters don't have much faith that the platform will act in good faith moving forward. The Post-Millennial first reporting, quote, "YouTube, the Google-owned video hosting platform, has suspended Right Side Broadcasting Network from its service for 2 weeks and deleted all videos of former President Donald Trump's February 28th speech at CPAC. Other live streams of President Trump's February 28th speech were also removed from YouTube in what appears to be a sweeping ban of his speech over his remarks. Try to find the video, you can't. And the remarks in question are in regard to President Trump once again speaking out about the integrity of the 2020 election. But the outright ban of his speech is remarkable. And when you look at his comments, perhaps the ban doesn't come in response to questioning the election results, but instead his calls for action against big tech.
Republicans, conservatives must open up our platforms and repeal Section 230 liability protections. And if the federal government refuses to act, then every state in the union where we have the votes, which is a lot of them, big tech giants like Twitter, Google, and Facebook should be punished with major sanctions whenever they silence conservative voices.
This is an issue that is becoming a focal point for many conservatives. One they say goes hand in hand with cancel culture applied disproportionately to their viewpoints. You heard President Trump say that states should be the ones taking action on this front, and we've seen Florida Governor Ron DeSantis show his support for such a measure. And the same thing could be happening in Texas, where Governor Greg Abbott is supporting a state bill that would, quote, "help prohibit social media companies from censoring Texans based on viewpoints they express, and give Texans a way to get back online if the social media company bans or blocks their account based on their political or religious views." Now, since Democrats control both chambers of Congress, not to mention the White House, this could be the way that Republicans truly combat tech censorship. Here's Governor Abbott making that case.
The United States of America was built on freedom of speech and healthy public debate. Big tech's efforts to silence conservative viewpoints is un-American, un-Texan, and it is unacceptable, and pretty soon it's going to be against the law in the state of Texas.
Amen. Joining us now for analysis on this issue and the Republican Party more broadly is GOP national spokesperson Paris Dennard. So Paris, this entire week we've seen the Trump administration put out some statements really taking aim at the Biden administration for its policies. And of course, we also got his comments at CPAC last weekend as well. So I just want to get your take on the president's input that we've seen so far.
Look, I think a lot of people were excited to see President Trump take the stage at CPAC because he took the stage in a commanding way, reminding the American people of exactly what he did to make their lives better. And not only did he do that, he showed the contrast between what he did in a positive way in 4 years and what Joe Biden has done in a disastrous way in just a little over a month. The contrast is so striking when President Trump laid out the things that he had done for the American people. When he talked about the border, the economy, when he talked about putting Americans first and highlighting the things that Joe Biden was doing, it was refreshing to see someone, hear someone actually be able to have such a large audience and remind the American people that we have got to hold Joe Biden and his entire administration accountable.
And I'm glad you bring that last point up, because actually when I watch these press briefings with Press Secretary Psaki, she will say things, for example, that there's no crisis at the border or that there is no influx of migrant children. But then we see leaked documents coming out through different news organizations showing that the complete opposite is taking place. And in fact, that even the DHS is worried about the numbers down there. We hear Democratic representatives raising the alarms at the southern border as well. So do you think that perhaps the lax coverage that was on the campaign trail is really coming out to the detriment of the American people, but now the press does have to hold them accountable in order to keep their ratings up, keep the accountability up? Are you seeing that take place?
Oh, absolutely. Look, Alex, when you saw the entire campaign trail, the media not holding Joe Biden or his team accountable, not forcing them to answer the tough questions or even give them an opportunity, meaning give the American people an opportunity to hear from them. That's just carrying over to the administration. Joe Biden feels that he doesn't have to be held accountable. He won't come to the press briefing room and hold a press conference and answer the questions from the press corps to answer the questions that the American people want to know about the actual crisis on the border, about killing jobs, about black unemployment going up to 9.9%, about the other issues that are really not helping the American people. He needs to be held accountable. And if it's not going to be the press holding him accountable or holding his press secretary accountable, then other people have to do it. That's part of what President Trump was doing. That's what we're doing at the Republican National Committee, because if we don't do this, the American people will suffer and they will not get the truth. And we have got to hold Joe Biden and his entire administration accountable for the things that they said they were going to do and are not doing. $2,000 stimulus checks dead on arrival, and this massive bill that they're putting out, $1.9 trillion, that is not even helping the American people when you see such a small percentage actually going to what the bill is supposed to be about. Americans are suffering, and these draconian measures that are still being perpetrated by Democrats are reaping, the American people are losing. That's why you see Republican governors saying, you know what, the federal government, you don't know what you're doing. Clearly, Joe Biden, we're going to take control, follow the data, follow the science, and begin to reopen our economies because our people can't take it anymore.
And talk about contrast. I mean, we can't even get a comment from Joe Biden. As you point out, he hasn't had a press briefing yet. But President Trump, I mean, it was hard to keep him quiet about certain issues. I mean, we got tweets about every single policy item. We got questions to him even when he was walking out to helicopters. It made for a difficult time getting sound bites because of the background noise. But at least we knew where he stood on many of these issues. And we're just not getting that from the Biden administration right now. I think you're exactly right. But Perry Shin said the president was largely given a pass on the campaign trail. And now those frustrations are carrying into the White House. Nearly 50 days into office, President Biden is yet to hold a press conference, which is the longest stretch of time to kick off an administration in at least a century. Now, compare this to President Trump, who frequently talked to reporters before boarding a helicopter or attending the press briefings himself, but was criticized for his war on the press. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked about this lack of transparency.
As all of you know, the president takes questions several times a week. He took questions actually twice yesterday, which is an opportunity for the people covering the White House to ask him about whatever news is happening on any given day. We look forward to holding a full press conference in the coming weeks before the end of the month, and we're working on setting a final date for that, and as soon as we do, we will let you all know. And I would say that his focus, again, is on getting recovery and relief to the American people, and he looks forward to continuing to engage with all of you and to other members of the media who aren't here today, and we'll look forward to letting you know as soon as that press conference is set.
But as you saw in last night's show, aides do cut off the feed when Biden asks for questions. He didn't take them. And that, by Psaki, is called a deflection. Because the White House also claims that it can do two things at once. Remember when they said that during the impeachment trial? We can impeach him and we can also do our agenda. But it's not as if there aren't major questions that the American people and many lawmakers are demanding answers for, especially on very important issues in this country. For example, Fox News reporting, quote, a group of House Republicans and at least one Democrat will send a letter to the Biden administration warning that its pause on new oil and gas permits is having a negative impact on existing operations. And that's not even the immediate concern, as there's currently a surge of migrants taking place at the southern border, something the White House refuses to even acknowledge.
But